I had often heard of the island, nestled quietly within the vastness of Lake Michigan, an experimental community so shrouded in secrecy that its existence seemed more like an urban legend than reality. Rumors swirled about a place where the government had once conducted genetic experiments, a laboratory hidden within a seemingly quaint township. Yet, it was not until a brisk autumn day when I received an invitation, an unexpected letter that would unravel the truth behind these whispers. The invitation was handwritten, its ink slightly smudged as if penned in haste. It was a call to visit the island, an opportunity to see the community for myself, signed by a Dr. Elias Marlowe, a name unfamiliar to me. Though perplexed by the invitation, a swell of curiosity pushed me to accept. It was a brief journey by ferry, the mainland quickly disappearing from view as the island loomed ahead, its silhouette sharp against the reddening sky. As I disembarked, the island greeted me with an overwhelming sense of tranquility. The village, with its charming cobblestone paths and picturesque cottages, seemed idyllic. The air was crisp, carrying with it the faint scent of pine and the distant sound of children's laughter. A peace settled over me as I strolled through the community, taking in its serene beauty. Yet beneath this veneer lay something I couldn't quite place, a subtle dissonance that prickled at the back of my mind. Dr. Marlowe, a gaunt man with thinning hair and eyes that seemed always to be searching for something just out of sight, met me at the village center. He spoke with a voice that was both soothing and unsettling, recounting the island's history as we walked. The community, he explained, was once a hub for genetic research, a project initiated decades ago to enhance human capabilities. But as funding dwindled and ethics grew murkier, the island transformed from a research facility into a self-sustaining society. Its residents left to foster the next generations. The children I saw playing in the square were unlike any others. There was an uncanny synchronicity to their movements, a grace that seemed almost choreographed, as if they were in constant silent communication. Their laughter, though genuine, had a peculiar note that sent a shiver down my spine. It was then I noticed their eyes, each pair reflecting an unsettling depth, as though they held secrets untold. As evening fell, Dr. Marlowe led me to a small inn where I would stay during my visit. The rooms were modest, yet comfortable, and as I lay in bed that night, the island's eerie calmness wrapped around me like a blanket. Sleep came fitfully, disturbed by dreams of faces I had never seen, yet somehow recognized, and whispers that faded into the night. The following day unfolded with the same serene facade. I wandered the paths, observing the daily lives of the villagers. They moved with purpose, their routines seamless and unperturbed by an outsider's presence. Conversations were hushed, eyes casting frequent fleeting glances my way. It was as if they shared a collective consciousness, a unity that extended beyond mere community. My exploration led me to the island's outskirts, where the forest loomed thick and imposing. It was there, amid the dense trees, that I first sensed the island's darker undertones. An inexplicable pull drew me deeper into the woods, and it was there I stumbled upon an abandoned structure, overgrown with ivy and neglect. The remnants of what was once a facility lay scattered, rusting equipment, faded notes scrawled in scientific jargon, and faded photographs of children, their faces alight with an unnatural vibrancy. It dawned on me that these were the predecessors of the children I had seen, perhaps the very subjects of the experiments long ceased. The realization settled like a stone in my stomach, the implications of which weighed heavily on my mind. Had these children been bred in captivity, their lives orchestrated by unseen hands, forever bound to the island by an experiment that had outlived its creators? Returning to the village, a new tension thrummed beneath the island's tranquil exterior. The children watched me with an intensity that was both captivating and unnerving, their eyes following my every move. I felt exposed under their silent scrutiny, as if they were assessing my presence, measuring my intentions. Dinner with Dr. Marlowe that evening was an equally unsettling affair. He spoke of the island with a reverence that bordered on zealotry, his words laced with an undercurrent of pride and something darker. He described the community's successes, the children's remarkable abilities, yet deftly sidestepped the ethical shadows cast by the island's past. When pressed, his answers were evasive, deflecting with the practiced ease of someone well-versed in concealing truths. As night descended, I found myself unable to shake the feeling of being an intruder in a world not meant for outsiders. The island, with its picturesque facade, had begun to reveal itself as a gilded cage, its residents the birds bred for a song only they could hear. The children, with their strange synchrony and knowing eyes, were the legacy of an experiment that, while abandoned, had never truly ended. It was in the dead of night that the island's true nature revealed itself. Awoken by a sound I couldn't quite place, I found myself drawn once more to the forest. The moonlight filtered through the branches, casting ghostly shadows on the path as I followed an unknown calling. It led me to a clearing where the children stood in a perfect circle, their eyes closed, faces lifted to the sky as if in silent communion. There was a palpable energy that thrummed through the air, a connection that seemed to pulse from child to child, binding them in an unseen web. I watched, transfixed, as they began to hum in unison, a haunting melody that resonated deep within me, stirring emotions I couldn't name. It was beautiful and terrifying, a lullaby and a warning entwined. In that moment, I understood the truth of the island, the legacy of experiments long buried but never forgotten. The children were not mere remnants. They were the culmination, carrying within them the echoes of a past shrouded in secrecy, their very existence a testament to human hubris. The island was their haven, a sanctuary built on the bones of ambition and ethical compromise. As the melody reached its crescendo, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace, a surrender to the inevitability of the island's truths. Yet with it came a lingering fear, a recognition that I had glimpsed something profound and unknowable. The island, with its serene facade and eerie depths, was a world unto itself, a place where the past and present coalesced in a haunting dance. When the night finally gave way to dawn, the children dispersed, leaving me alone in the clearing. The island, now bathed in morning light, seemed almost mundane in its beauty, the shadows of night retreating to the corners of memory. Yet as I retraced my steps back to the village, I knew the island's secrets would remain with me, etched into my mind like an indelible mark. Dr. Marlowe bid me farewell at the dock, his expression unreadable, yet tinged with an understanding that needed no words. The ferry pulled away, the island slowly receding into the horizon, a haunting silhouette that would forever linger in my thoughts. Even now, back on the mainland, the island's essence haunts me. The children, with their ethereal smiles and eyes that saw beyond the veil of normalcy, remain vivid in my mind. The melody of that night, an eternal whisper, reminds me that some truths are not meant to be uncovered, some mysteries best left enshrouded in their own shadows. The air was crisp and carried a metallic tang as I stepped off the boat onto the shore of the Holy Isle, the wind combing through my hair with an insistence that felt almost like a caress. There was a sense of peace that permeated this place, as though the land itself was untouched by time. The sand was cool beneath my shoes, and I could feel the history humming beneath my feet, a pulsing reminder of the lives that had once thrived here. The island was an isolated speck amidst the vast expanse of the sea, its only features a ruined monastery perched atop a craggy hill and the remnants of a castle silhouetted against the pale sky. I had been drawn here by the stories, whispered in corners of libraries and in the cryptic notes of old journals. A ceremony, they said, that was both sacred and sinister, a rite that tethered the island to the world in ways few understood. I was not alone. Several others had made the journey with me, though we traveled separately. I recognized their faces from the ferry, each bearing expressions of quiet determination, or perhaps resignation. We nodded to one another with the silent camaraderie of those who knew they were about to partake in something beyond the ordinary. As I made my way toward the monastery, the path wound through a landscape dotted with wild flowers and gnarled trees, their branches reaching out like wizened fingers. The stone ruins loomed ahead, their presence a testament to the echoes of chants long extinguished from the present, but somehow preserved in the very stones that made up the structure. Inside, the monastery was a labyrinth of shadows and light, the air thick with the scent of damp stone and something else. Incense, perhaps, or the lingering traces of a long-forgotten ritual. I wandered through the aisles, my footsteps muffled by the moss that carpeted the ground. The silence here was profound, a deep, resonant quiet that promised secrets to those willing to listen. It was then that I noticed the first disturbance. A chill crept through the air, not the kind brought on by the sea breeze, but one that emanated from within, a sensation that pricked at the edges of my consciousness. I had the unshakable feeling of being watched, as though the walls themselves had eyes and were observing my every move with a scrutiny that was both unsettling and intimate. I paused before what must have once been an altar, now nothing more than a slab of stone surrounded by crumbling pillars. The feeling of being watched intensified, and I turned sharply, expecting to find someone standing behind me. There was no one, only a trick of the light, perhaps, or the shadows playing games with my mind. As I turned to leave, I caught sight of something etched into the stone, a series of symbols that were almost obscured by the encroaching moss. Curiosity piqued, I leaned closer, tracing the lines with my fingers. The symbols were familiar, reminiscent of those I had seen in the old journals, their meanings lost to the passage of time, but still carrying an aura of significance. Questions churned in my mind as I exited the monastery, the sense of being observed lingering like an unwelcome guest. I decided to head toward the castle, hoping to find answers, or at least some distraction from the unease that had settled over me. The path to the castle was steeper, the grass slippery underfoot. The ruins rose majestically, their walls encased in ivy, the windows dark and vacant. There was a beauty to the decay, a solemn dignity that spoke of ancient glories and forgotten tragedies. Within the castle's boundaries, I found a group of the others who had journeyed here. They were gathered in a circle, their voices hushed and serious. As I approached, they turned toward me, their faces a mixture of relief and anticipation. It was clear they had been discussing the ceremony, the rite that had drawn us all to this desolate place. We spoke quietly, sharing the fragments of knowledge each of us had gleaned. The ceremony was said to be a binding of sorts, a communion with the island's spirit, a spirit that demanded sacrifice, though the nature of such a sacrifice was shrouded in mystery. No one knew for certain what it entailed or who might be chosen, only that it was essential for the island's continued existence. Our conversation was interrupted by the sound of footsteps approaching. A figure emerged from the shadows, an elderly man, whose features were sharp and weathered. His eyes bright, with an intensity that belied his age. He introduced himself as the keeper of the isle, the guardian of its secrets, and the one who would oversee the ceremony. His presence was commanding, and as he spoke, we listened with rapt attention. The ceremony, he explained, was a tradition that stretched back centuries, a pact between the land and those who sought its protection. It was a ritual of renewal, a way to ensure the balance was maintained, though he did not elaborate on what the balance entailed. The keeper's gaze swept over us, measuring, assessing, and I felt a shiver race down my spine. There was something unsettling in his eyes, a depth of knowledge that seemed both ancient and alien. With a final nod, he bid us prepare for the ceremony, which would take place at dusk. As the day wore on, a sense of tension built among us, a silent understanding that something significant was about to unfold. I found myself drawn back to the monastery, seeking solace in its crumbling walls, while the others dispersed to contemplate their own thoughts and fears. It was there, in the fading light, that the true nature of the ceremony revealed itself to me. As shadows lengthened and the sun dipped below the horizon, the symbols on the altar seemed to glow with an inner light, pulsating with a rhythm that matched my heartbeat. The air around me vibrated with an energy that was both exhilarating and terrifying. I was not alone. A presence filled the space, a being unseen yet undeniably there, its essence woven into the fabric of the island itself. I felt its call, a beckoning that resonated deep within my soul, urging me to step forward, to embrace the role that had been chosen for me. The realization struck me with the force of a tidal wave. I was the sacrifice, the chosen one, selected not by chance but by a design that had been set in motion long before my arrival. Panic surged through me, followed swiftly by acceptance, a calm that settled over my fear like a balm. As I stood before the altar, a sense of peace enveloped me, a certainty that this was my destiny, that the island's spirit and mine were intertwined in a dance that transcended time and space. I closed my eyes, surrendering to the moment, feeling the energy flow through me, around me, becoming a part of me in a way that was both intimate and profound. When I opened my eyes, the others were there, their faces illuminated by the dying light. They watched with expressions of awe and reverence, understanding dawning in their eyes as the keeper stepped forward to begin the ceremony. His voice rang out, a chant in a language both alien and familiar, weaving through the air like a silken thread. I could feel the island's spirit responding, its presence a comforting embrace that surrounded us all. The ceremony was a blur of sensation and emotion, a symphony of light and sound that seemed to stretch on for eternity. I felt myself lifted, carried by the tide of energy that surged through the monastery, a conduit between the island and the world beyond. As the final notes of the chant faded into silence, I found myself standing once more before the altar, the symbols now dormant, their glow extinguished. The keeper's gaze met mine, a silent acknowledgement of what had transpired, a shared understanding that words could not capture. In the aftermath, there was a stillness, a moment frozen in time as we stood together, bound by the experience we had just shared. The island felt different, its spirit no longer a distant echo, but a living presence that pulsed beneath the surface, a heartbeat that matched my own. With the ceremony complete, we departed the monastery, our footsteps echoing softly in the twilight. The island seemed to welcome us with open arms. The tension that had hung over us dissipated like morning mist. Yet, as we returned to our lives, the memory of the ceremony lingered, a haunting refrain that played at the edges of my consciousness. The island remained with me, its spirit a constant companion that whispered secrets in the quiet moments, a reminder of the choice I had made and the bond that could never be broken. Even now, I feel its presence, a gentle tug on my soul, a call that beckons me back to the Holy Isle, where the ruins stand watch over the sea and the ancient rite endures, a testament to the enduring connection between the land and those who heed its call. And so, the fear remains, not of the island itself, but of the knowledge it has imparted, a revelation that has forever altered my understanding of the world and my place within it. The island's spirit and mine are one, bound by a ceremony that transcends time, an eternal dance that continues to unfold beneath the stars. The first time I set foot on the isolated island, it was under the guise of a documentary project, an island virtually unknown, skimming through the annals of time undisturbed, perched as a lone sentinel in the vastness of the ocean. The islanders, a small community of peculiar recluses, were the subject of my interest. I carried with me a sense of excitement and anticipation, eager to uncover the whispered secrets of a place untouched by modernity. Life on the island appeared idyllic at first glance. The villagers moved through a rhythm of life as ancient as the land itself, each day marked by the rising and setting of the sun. They welcomed me with a hospitality that was genuine, though reserved, their eyes often lingering a second too long, as if assessing my worthiness. There was a tranquility in the air, a tranquility that belied an undercurrent of tension I could not yet decipher. My lodgings were simple yet comfortable, a small hut that overlooked the vast sea. Each morning I would rise with the sun to the gentle sound of waves lapping against the shore, a sound that gradually became more than just a backdrop. It was a quiet reminder of the island's isolation, its detachment from the world I knew. The villagers went about their rituals with an unspeakable grace, their lives intertwined with the rhythms of nature, the sea, and the winds that whispered through the palms. Life blossomed around me with an air of enigmatic simplicity, punctuated only by the occasional whisper of something lurking just beneath the surface. It was during one of my walks through the village that I first noticed the strangeness, a peculiarity that gnawed at the edges of my senses. In the heart of the village stood a stone altar, weathered by centuries, its presence a testament to an ancient reverence. The villagers called it the Guardian's Rest, a sacred place, they said, protected by the guardian of the hidden world. The first instance of disturbance came unexpectedly, a ripple in the calm facade. A young girl, no older than 6, approached me with a solemnity that seemed beyond her years. Her eyes told of a wisdom that contradicted her youth, as if she held secrets untold. She handed me a small driftwood carving, its form strange and twisted, resembling no creature I had seen before. "For protection," she whispered, her voice barely audible against the whisper of the wind. Confused, I accepted the gift, thanking her with a nod. As she scampered away, I studied the carving, feeling the smoothness of wood shaped by hands, molded by tradition. It was a small token, yet it felt heavy with portent. I tucked it into the pocket of my jacket, a talisman against an unknown threat. Days passed, and the island's veneer of tranquility began to show its cracks. The villagers' behavior grew more insular, their eyes shadowed with a wary vigilance. Conversations ceased when I approached, replaced by furtive glances and whispered exchanges. It was as if the island itself held its breath, waiting for an inevitable occurrence. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the land in hues of crimson and gold, I found myself drawn to the Guardian's Rest. The altar stood silent, an imposing figure against the encroaching darkness. I felt an inexplicable pull, a desire to understand the mystery that clung to the villagers like a shroud. As I stood there, a figure emerged from the shadows, an elder, his face etched with the lines of age and wisdom. "You feel it, don't you?" he asked, his voice a soft rumble of earth and stone. "The island's spirit calls to you." I nodded, unable to articulate the unease that had settled in my bones. "What is this place?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "It is a sanctuary, a boundary between worlds," he replied. "Here, The Guardian watches over us, keeping the darkness at bay. But there are times when the boundary weakens and the drifters come. Drifters? I echoed, the word foreign yet familiar. Spirits untethered, lost between worlds, the elder explained, his eyes distant, as if seeing beyond the veil of our reality. They seek to enter, to find solace in the living world. The revelation hung heavy in the air, the weight of it pressing against my chest. It was then that I understood the significance of the driftwood carving, a talisman against the drifters. The island was not merely isolated by geography, but shrouded by a supernatural boundary, a fragile shield against forces that sought entry into our world. The nights grew longer, darkness creeping into the edges of the village like an encroaching tide. The air was charged with anticipation, a sense of waiting for something inevitable, something that could not be stopped. The villagers gathered at the altar in silent vigil, their faces drawn and weary, eyes fixed on the horizon where the sea met the sky. The escalation came suddenly, without warning. A storm rolled in from the sea, fierce and unrelenting, battering the island with winds that howled like tormented souls. The villagers gathered at the Guardian's Rest, forming a circle around the altar, their voices rising in a chant that resonated with a primal power. I stood among them, the driftwood carving clutched tightly in my hand, feeling the raw energy coursing through us, binding us as one. The storm reached a fever pitch, the air crackling with electricity as the boundary weakened, the drifters clawing at the edges of our world. Through the chaos, I saw them, shadows moving against the darkness, figures translucent and insubstantial, eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. They pressed against the boundary, seeking entry, their presence a palpable weight in the air. In the eye of the storm, the islanders' chant rose to a crescendo, a plea for protection, a call to the Guardian. The elder stepped forward, his voice ringing out above the tumult, invoking the ancient power that lay dormant within the land. The altar glowed with an ethereal light, a beacon in the storm, casting the shadows back into the void. The climax came with a sudden stillness, a moment suspended in time as the boundary was restored. The drifters repelled back into the darkness. The island sighed as one, a collective exhalation of relief as the storm abated, the wind dying to a whisper. The villagers dispersed, their faces weary but relieved, the knowledge of their triumph etched into their eyes. Yet the fear lingered, a shadow in the corners of my mind, a reminder of the fragility of the boundary. The island's tranquility was restored, but the memory of the drifters remained, a lingering fear that could not be erased. I carried the driftwood carving with me, a talisman against the darkness, a reminder of the hidden world that lay beyond the veil of reality. As I prepared to leave the island, I understood that the cleansing ritual was more than tradition. It was a necessity, a guardian's duty to protect the living from the lost. The villagers watched as my boat departed, their eyes fixed on the horizon where the sea met the sky, a silent vigil for the world they protected. The island receded into the distance, its secrets safe for another turn of the tide. But as I returned to the world I knew, the fear lingered still, a whisper of shadows in the periphery of my vision. I realized then that the boundary between worlds was thin, and the drifters would always be there, waiting for the moment when they might slip through once more. The sky bore the muted hues of dawn when I first saw the island, a lonely silhouette against the vast expanse of shimmering water. Our small boat, battered from the unexpected storm, creaked and groaned as the waves pushed us mercilessly towards the shore. I had not anticipated such a violent shift in the weather, nor the silent, foreboding welcome of the isle that now loomed closer with every passing second. As I staggered onto the soft sand, I felt a surreal sense of relief mingled with trepidation. The island, with its dense cluster of palm trees and the gentle rustle of leaves, seemed almost tranquil. It bore the deceptive appearance of paradise, untouched by human hands. For a moment, I could almost convince myself that this could be a place of refuge, a temporary sanctuary until rescue came. The first few days on the island were peaceful. I spent my time gathering coconuts and fishing with makeshift spears. The sun was unforgiving, and the nights were cool, but the simplicity of survival offered its own rhythm. I found a small freshwater spring, its discovery a stroke of good fortune, and set up camp nearby under the foliage, where the leaves provided scant shelter from the elements. Yet, despite the island's serene veneer, an inexplicable unease gnawed at me. At times, as I wandered along the shore or delved into the dense underbrush in search of food, I caught glimpses of movement out of the corner of my eye. Shadows that seemed too deliberate, too alive to be swayed solely by the wind. Then came the first disturbance. It was a night like any other, the moon casting a silvery glow over the landscape. I was awakened by a sound, a low, mournful wail that seemed to carry on the wind. It rose and fell in haunting cadence, chilling the nighttime air. Listening intently, I realized it was no mere animal call. Something far more sinister lay at its origin. Sleep proved elusive that night. I lay staring at the canopy of stars, the sound of the ocean a steady rhythm that accented the anxious beating of my heart. In the morning, as the first light of day dispelled the shadows, I set out to explore the source of the noise. My feet carried me deeper into the heart of the island, past ancient trees that towered like silent sentinels, their boughs whispering secrets older than time itself. The terrain grew more rugged as I pressed on, and soon I found myself standing before the entrance of a cave, its gaping mouth a dark promise of mystery. Hesitant, yet driven by a curious compulsion, I entered. The air was cool inside, and my footsteps echoed softly as I moved deeper into the darkness. It was there, in the shadowy depths, that I first encountered the creature. It was unlike anything I had ever seen, a figure of darkness and fluid form, as though it were shaped by the shadows themselves. Its eyes, when they found mine, were orbs of cold, fathomless black that seemed to peer into the very soul. I froze, every instinct screaming to flee, yet my body refused to obey. The creature made no move towards me. It merely observed, a presence both terrifying and oddly tranquil. After what felt like an eternity, It turned, disappearing into the deeper recesses of the cave, leaving behind an air of profound unease. I stumbled out into the sunlight, my mind racing to comprehend the encounter. The days that followed were marked by an escalating tension. I began to notice other signs, strange patterns in the sand, and unfamiliar tracks leading to and from the forest. Each night, the haunting wail echoed, sometimes closer, sometimes distant, a constant reminder of the entity that shared the island with me. Desperation spurred me into action. I crafted rudimentary tools, set up traps, but all efforts seemed futile. The creature, whatever it was, moved with an intelligence that belied its beastly form. It seemed neither hostile nor benign, simply present, a spectral overseer of the island's solitude. The climax arrived on a stormy night, when the winds howled like a chorus of phantoms and the rain fell in sheets. My camp was a miserable refuge against the elements, and the oppressive darkness made the world seem small and confined. A flash of lightning illuminated the figure standing at the edge of the clearing, its form blending seamlessly with the shadows. This time, I did not retreat. Whether it was madness or courage that governed my actions, I stepped forward. The air around me was charged with an electricity that was not entirely of the storm's making. We stood facing each other, the creature and I, two solitary figures bound by the island's enigma. In that moment, clarity washed over me. The creature was not merely a beast, but a guardian of sorts, an ancient spirit intertwined with the very essence of the island. It was then I understood that this encounter was my penance, a test of survival and understanding, a trial of redemption for past sins I had long buried under the sands of forgetfulness. The creature moved towards me, its form shifting like smoke in the wind. It paused, and as its eyes met mine once more, I felt a profound acceptance, a silent acknowledgement of shared solitude. Then it was gone, leaving behind a sense of peace and a lingering question. Was this redemption, or simply a new beginning? The storm passed, and with it, the oppressive weight of fear seemed to lift. The island, though still isolated, no longer felt like a prison. Instead, it became a place of reflection where I could confront the past I had tried to escape. The creature's presence, though unseen, was a constant whisper in the rustle of the leaves and the crash of the waves. As I write this, I know that rescue may come one day, or perhaps it may not. But here, in this tranquil captivity, I have made my peace. The island has become both my sanctuary and my confessor. I am no longer the man who arrived on these shores, but someone new, shaped by the silence and the shadows, forever altered by the creature's gaze. And so, the fear lingers, not in the form of dread, but as a reminder of the unknown that still breathes beneath the island's surface. In every shadow lies a story untold, in every whisper, a secret kept. The creature, a guardian of mysteries, watches still, a silent friend in the solitude of my redemption. My journey to the southern Pacific island began under the pretext of an academic expedition, a noble cause masked by my personal curiosity. The island, unnamed on many maps but known in whispers among archaeologists, was said to contain ruins of an ancient civilization buried deep within its dense jungles. My colleagues at the university were skeptical, dismissing it as another wild goose chase inspired by myths and half-truths. But my determination was unwavering, fueled by obscure references and a series of increasingly vivid dreams that tugged at my consciousness. My arrival was unceremonious, the small seaplane skimming across the crystalline waters before depositing me on a narrow strip of yellow sand. The island was lush, the air heavy with humidity and the sweet scent of blooming flora. The only sounds were the gentle lapping of waves and the distant calls of exotic birds, a symphony of nature that shrouded the island's secrets in serene beauty. For the first few days, I settled into a routine. My modest camp was established near the shore, a canvas tent my only shelter from the elements. By day, I ventured into the jungle, machete in hand, cutting through the thick underbrush in search of any signs of the ancient ruins. By night, I pored over my notes and sketches, trying to piece together the fragments of evidence I had gathered from a multitude of disparate sources. The forest was a world unto itself, a living entity that seemed to breathe and pulse with an energy all its own. Towering trees, their canopies interwoven like a verdant tapestry, filtered the sunlight into ethereal beams that danced upon the forest floor. Vines hung like serpents from the branches, swaying gently with the breeze. I felt a sense of peace, a comforting normalcy amid the wildness. Yet, beneath this tranquility, there was an undercurrent of something else, an awareness that prickled at the edges of my mind. The first disturbance came on the 5th day. I had stumbled upon a clearing, its grassy expanse dotted with strange stone structures that rose from the earth like the bones of forgotten giants. Weathered and overgrown, these monoliths bore intricate carvings that defied any known language, their glyphs twisting into shapes that seemed almost alive when touched by the sunlight. As I carefully documented the sight, a shiver ran down my spine. A faint laughter, distant yet unmistakable, echoed through the trees. I froze, the pen slipping from my fingers as I strained to listen. The laughter was neither joyful nor sinister, but it carried with it an unsettling familiarity, as if the island itself was acknowledging my presence. That night, I lay awake in my tent, the tropical heat oppressive and stifling. The laughter haunted my thoughts, a ghostly refrain that replayed over and over. I rationalized it as the product of fatigue and isolation, yet a lingering unease gnawed at me. Sleep came fitfully, filled with dreams of shadowy figures dancing amongst the ruins, their laughter mingling with the rustle of leaves. The following days saw an escalation of the island's strange phenomena. As I delved deeper into the jungle, the laughter grew more frequent, more insistent. It seemed to follow me, a shadowy companion that never revealed itself. The forest, once a place of vibrant life, now felt watchful, its presence heavy and omnipotent. The very air vibrated with an anticipation that set my nerves on edge. One afternoon, as I examined a particularly elaborate carving, I felt a prickle of awareness at the back of my neck. Turning slowly, I saw nothing but the dense foliage. Yet the laughter rippled through the air, closer now and more pronounced. I called out, a tentative greeting that was swallowed by the jungle's silence. The response was immediate, a burst of laughter that seemed to come from all directions at once, surrounding me in its intangible embrace. Panic threatened to overwhelm me, but I forced myself to focus, to remember the purpose that had brought me here. My nights were restless, plagued by vivid dreams that seemed more real than waking life. In these dreams, I wandered through the ruins, guided by laughter that led me deeper and deeper into the heart of the island. There, a shadowy figure awaited, its features obscured by darkness. Each night, I attempted to reach it, but just as I thought I would succeed, the dream would dissolve, leaving me alone in my tent, drenched in sweat. The climax came on the 10th day. I had ventured further than ever, driven by an inexplicable compulsion. The jungle seemed to part before me, as if guiding me towards a destination I was meant to find. Eventually, I emerged into a clearing larger than any I had seen. In its center stood a towering stone archway, its surface engraved with the same glyphs that adorned the other ruins. The air was thick with expectation, the silence so profound that I could hear my own breathing, quick and shallow. As I approached the archway, the laughter began again, a cacophony that resonated deep within my bones. It was no longer distant, but immediate, enveloping me like a living thing. My heart pounded as I stepped beneath the arch, the world shifting around me as I crossed the threshold. On the other side, the jungle remained unchanged, yet there was a palpable difference. The air felt heavier, the colors deeper and more vivid, and there, standing before me, was the shadowy figure from my dreams. Its form was indistinct, a silhouette against the vibrant backdrop of the jungle, yet its presence was undeniable. The laughter ceased, replaced by a profound silence that seemed to stretch on for eternity. We stood there, the figure and I, locked in a silent communion. I felt an understanding pass between us, a recognition of a bond that transcended time and space. The figure inclined its head, a gesture of acknowledgement, and then slowly faded into the forest, leaving me alone once more. The journey back to my camp was a blur, my mind reeling from the encounter. The jungle, though unchanged, now felt different, as if imbued with a newfound respect for the secrets it harbored. The laughter no longer haunted me, but lingered as a gentle memory, a reminder of the unseen presence that watched over the island. Though I eventually left the island, its mysteries unresolved, the experience remains with me, a lingering fear that resides in the quiet corners of my mind. The ruins, the laughter, and the shadowy figure are as vivid now as they were then, etched into my memory. The island's secrets continue to elude explanation, but the encounter has reshaped my understanding of the world, leaving me with the unsettling knowledge that some mysteries are meant to remain unsolved. The jungle was, in its own right, a breathing entity. Each day, as I trudged through the dense foliage, the cacophony of hidden creatures blended into a symphony of life that both soothed and tormented my senses. I was a soldier in the British Indian Army during the Arakan campaign in Burma. and the war was a distant rumble compared to the immediacy of the jungle's presence. The air was thick with humidity, the kind that clung to your skin and made every breath a labor. Yet, amidst the chaos of war, the Arakan jungles offered an odd sense of normalcy. The routine of survival anchored us amidst the larger storm. The company I was part of had grown accustomed to the rhythm of the jungle. We were a group of men, welded together by the fire of conflict, each of us aware of the other's fears and habits. The jungle was a constant, an unchanging backdrop to our daily struggles. It was easier to surrender to its embrace than to resist it, easier to let its verdant tendrils wrap around us than to fight its immensity. We had learned to read its signs, to interpret its whispers, and navigate its dense undergrowth with the expertise of those who had been hardened by necessity. It was during one of these routine patrols that the first disturbance broke the veneer of normalcy. We had been assigned to scout a section of the jungle that was, according to our intelligence, possibly infiltrated by enemy forces. As we moved deeper into the green labyrinth, the air seemed to grow denser, more oppressive. My senses were on high alert, sharpened by the ever-present danger, yet what I felt was not the usual anxiety of an impending skirmish. It was something more profound, more ancient. The jungle seemed to shift around us, its shadows lengthening and twisting in ways that defied logic. There was a moment, a fleeting glimpse of something that my mind could not fully comprehend. It was a shape, a movement at the periphery of my vision, slithering between the trees with an unnatural grace. I dismissed it initially as a trick of the light, a manifestation of my weary mind, until I saw it again. This time, others saw it too, a collective recognition of an entity that did not belong to this world. It was as if the jungle itself was harboring a secret, a hidden presence that had grown tired of remaining unseen. Our patrol continued, but the atmosphere had shifted. The men were uneasy, their usual banter replaced by tense silences, punctuated by furtive glances between the trees. We all sensed it now, an undercurrent of something watching us, something malevolent and ancient. We pressed on, driven by duty and an unspoken agreement to unravel the mystery that had enshrouded us. Each step felt like a descent into madness, the jungle closing in around us with a predatory hunger. The escalation of events was as insidious as the creeping vines that tangled our path. 2 of our men vanished without a trace, swallowed by the jungle with barely a whisper. Their disappearance was met with a grim acceptance, for we all knew that the jungle was not a forgiving adversary. Yet, there was something else at play, a deeper, more sinister force at work. We began to speak of the jungle in hushed tones, as if fearing that our words might summon its wrath. Each night as we made camp, the darkness would settle like a living entity, blanketing us with an impenetrable shroud. The usual nocturnal calls of the jungle were absent, replaced by an eerie silence that pressed down on us with a suffocating weight. It was during these nights that the dreams came, visions of an incomprehensible horror lurking just beyond the veil of sleep. I I saw shapes, twisted and grotesque, writhing in a darkness more profound than any I had ever known. They whispered my name, beckoning me to join them in their eternal embrace. The climax came with the suddenness of a lightning strike. We had made camp near a river, hoping that its presence might offer some reprieve from the oppressive heat. As night fell, the air hummed with a strange energy, a vibrational pulse that resonated in my bones. It was then that the entity revealed itself, a monstrous form that defied the boundaries of reality, emerging from the jungle with a fluidity that was both beautiful and terrifying. It was as if the very fabric of the world had torn open to release this abomination, a being of shadows and whispers, its presence warping the space around it. Panic ensued, our discipline unraveling in the face of this eldritch horror. Men screamed, their minds shattering under the weight of its gaze. I stood frozen, a prisoner of my own terror, as it reached out with tendrils of darkness, each one a promise of oblivion. There was no escape from its grasp, no sanctuary in which to hide. It was as if the jungle itself had become an extension of the entity, its roots and vines lashing out to ensnare us. In that moment of despair, a clarity emerged. I understood that this entity was not of our world, not a creature born of flesh and blood. It was a manifestation of the jungle's deepest nightmares, a sentinel guarding the threshold between reality and an unfathomable abyss. As it loomed over us, I felt a strange peace settle within me, a resignation to the inevitable. The entity receded as abruptly as it had appeared, the jungle releasing us from its cryptic hold. We were left with the echoes of its presence, the jungle returning to its indifferent symphony. Our numbers were fewer, the survivors burdened with the haunted knowledge of what we had witnessed. Yet, the jungle was unchanged, its mysteries intact, its secrets guarded by an eldritch custodian. In the days that followed, the lingering fear took root in our minds, an insidious presence that shadowed our every step. The jungle was no longer a mere backdrop to our war. It had become an active participant, a sentient force with its own agenda. We spoke little of what we had encountered, the words heavy with the weight of disbelief. Yet, we all knew that the jungle held on to its secrets, waiting patiently for the next unwary soul to wander into its depths. I returned to the front lines eventually, but the memory of the jungle and its nightmare never left me. In the quiet moments, when the world around me grew still, I could feel its presence, a constant reminder of the boundaries between sanity and madness. The jungle was alive in ways that defied comprehension, its heart beating in time with an ancient rhythm that resonated through my very being. As I sit now, penning these reflections, I am struck by the sense of inevitability that pervades my memories. The jungle was never just a landscape. It was a living, breathing enigma, a repository of truths that mankind was never meant to uncover. And though I have left its shadow, the jungle remains a part of me, its whispers a constant echo in the corridors of my mind. In the heart of the Amazon, where the dense canopy keeps secrets from the sun and whispers of the wind carry the echoes of forgotten legends, I embarked on a journey that would forever alter my perception of reality. As an ethnobotanist, I was drawn toward the uncharted depths of the jungle, intrigued by stories of a plant that could cure any ailment, a botanical marvel shrouded in the myth of divine origins. Growing up, tales of the jungle god, the last of its kind, were bedtime stories that lulled me into dreams of adventure. Now, standing at the edge of the world's green lung, those stories felt like a calling. The first few days were a blur of routine. My guide, Miguel, a local with a deep knowledge of the forest, led us through the underbrush with the deftness of someone born to it. Beneath the oppressive heat and the symphony of the jungle's creatures, I felt a sense of normalcy, even peace. I documented every plant we encountered, careful not to disturb the delicate balance of the ecosystem. Our camp was a humble setup, nestled beside a clear, burbling stream, the sound of which lulled me into a sense of security each night. It was during one of these tranquil evenings, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and red, that Miguel spoke of the God's Fall. His voice held an eerie reverence as he recounted the legend. Long ago, he began, a deity roamed these forests, a guardian spirit who took on the form of a great beast. As humans encroached upon its domain, it withdrew deeper into the jungle, and with it, the power it bestowed upon the land began to wane. But the god was said to have left behind a part of itself in the form of a rare plant, one that could heal mortal wounds and grant visions of the divine. I listened, captivated by his words, my skepticism tempered by the wonder of the place. The rational part of me dismissed it as folklore, yet a small, insidious seed of curiosity took root. That night, as I lay in my tent, the jungle seemed to breathe around me, each rustle and chirp a reminder of the mysteries it held. The first disturbance came when Miguel disappeared. It was early, before dawn, when I noticed his absence. His hammock lay empty, swaying slightly as if he had just left. I waited, assuming he had gone to answer nature's call. But as the hours stretched and the sun rose, worry set in. I ventured out, calling his name, my voice swallowed by the jungle. There was no response, only the indifferent chorus of life that continued around me. I retraced our path from the previous day, hoping to find some clue. Instead, I stumbled upon something far more unsettling, a clearing, untouched by the chaos of the forest, its center dominated by a massive stone, an altar perhaps, weathered by time, but still imposing. The air here was different, charged with an energy that prickled my skin, and at the base of the stone, I found a scattering of Miguel's belongings, his canteen, a small journal, but no sign of him. Panic began to seep in, a cold sweat breaking across my brow. I was alone, truly alone, the realization as suffocating as the humid air. I returned to camp, hoping against hope that Miguel would be there, waiting with an explanation. But the camp was as I left it, untouched and silent. With the sun setting once more, I made the decision to stay put, lighting a fire in the hopes it would guide Miguel back to me. Sleep was elusive, my mind a cacophony of fear and logic. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, the hairs on the back of my neck standing at attention. Every crack of a branch, every rustle of leaves sent my heart racing. The following day, the forest felt different, more alive, as if aware of my presence, scrutinizing my every move. I set out again, driven by the need to find Miguel and an inexplicable draw toward the altar I had discovered. The path seemed to unfold before me, urging me forward. As days turned into a week, my routine became a quest. I spent long hours scouring the jungle, only to return to the altar, now a focal point of both my hope and dread. The journal I found was a trove of notes, sketches of plants, and entries in Miguel's neat handwriting, detailing observations and musings about the jungle. But the last entry spoke of a dream of transformation and a beckoning call deeper into the heart of the forest. The transformation began subtly. I first noticed it in the way the jungle seemed to respond to my thoughts. Plants would part as I approached, animals watched but did not flee, and the air buzzed with an energy that I could feel in my bones. I chalked it up to exhaustion and stress, yet each day the sensation grew stronger, more insistent. Then came the visions, fleeting at first, like glimpses through a fogged window, shapes and shadows that danced in my peripheral vision. But with each night, they grew clearer, more vivid. I saw the god of the jungle, a creature of immense power and grace, its eyes pools of wisdom and sorrow. It walked with purpose through the forest, its presence a catalyst for life, each step leaving trails of green and vibrant growth. The climax of my experience came during a storm. The air was thick with the promise of rain, the sky a tumultuous canvas of dark clouds. I stood at the altar, a silent witness to nature's fury. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the clearing in stark relief, and in that moment, I felt a surge of energy so profound it brought me to my knees. The jungle god stood before me, no longer a figment of dreams, but a tangible presence, its eyes meeting mine with an understanding that transcended words. The transformation was complete. I felt the boundaries of my being dissolve, merging with the essence of the forest. I saw through its eyes, felt through its senses, my humanity a distant memory. The god's fall was not a demise but a passing of the mantle, a cycle of rebirth in which I was now entwined. When the storm passed, the world was changed. I was changed. The jungle was no longer a mere collection of flora and fauna. It was a living, breathing entity, its consciousness intertwined with mine. Miguel was gone, perhaps never to return, yet I understood now. The call he had followed was the same that had led me here, a summons not to heal, but to become. In the days that followed, I remained at the altar, guarding it as a sentinel of the new order. I no longer needed sustenance. The jungle provided all I required. Time lost its meaning, each day blending into the next, a seamless flow of existence. The lingering fear, however, was not for myself, but for the world beyond the jungle. I had witnessed the transformation, felt the power of the god within me, and understood its fragility. The world outside crept ever closer, its reach threatening to disrupt the delicate balance we had achieved. I feared for them, for those who would come seeking answers, only to find the same fate. Yet, I knew that should another soul be drawn to the heart of the jungle, they too would find a path, a transformation that would change everything. The jungle kept its secrets, and I, now a part of it, held them close, knowing that some mysteries were meant to remain hidden, their truths a quiet echo in the symphony of life.